Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. I'm Doctor Squee. This is my show. Now, in the brief history of the Doctor Squee Show, we've had some people on who I've referred to as like heroes. They've been heroes of mine. So we've had a member of the Bare Naked Ladies, one of my favorite bands. We've had Olympic gold medal winners. We've had Oscar winners. We've had someone who I grew up watching with my dad, like just personal heroes and people who've made achievements in their own fields. Tonight, we've got someone on who genuinely is helping protect and helping to look after this world of ours and helping to change it for the better. Someone who kind of, I think, truly earns that title of hero. But to give him his propers, he is a Canadian marine conservationist, advocate for animal rights, writer and author. He co-founded Greenpeace and Greenpeace International and founded the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, protecting seals, dolphins, whales, sharks, sea turtles, and other marine animals. He has risked life and limb and incarceration in the aid of protecting sea life and still does so without harming his fellow humans. Please welcome to the Doctor Squee Show, Captain Paul Watson. How are you doing tonight, Captain Watson?
Pretty good, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. So, quite a busy and illustrious career you've had.
I guess it's been a long time.
Yeah. So I want to take you back to the beginning. So you started life in Toronto on the 2nd of December 1950. You were born. It was in the lobster fishing town of St. Andrews by the Sea. At the so like being born there, was that kind of where you first bonded with kind of marine life?
Well, yeah, it was a Eastern Canadian fishing village that I was raised in. So yeah, I was very close to whales and seals and birds and that. But I think my activism actually began with beavers because I spent a summer when I was 10 swimming with a family of beavers. And the next year I couldn't find them, found out that during the winter trappers had taken them all. So that made me pretty angry. So that winter I walked the trap lines and freed animals and destroyed the traps. So I've been doing it pretty much the same thing ever since.
And at the age of, like you said, 10 there, I read on the website 9, I think you're selling yourself short here. You're being modest.
No, I started when I was 11, actually, as an activist.
Oh, 11, sorry, pardon me. So, what did your parents make of kind of you getting involved with that at such a young age?
Well, I got in trouble a lot, disrupting deer hunts, goose hunting, things like that. I guess I shot a boy in the ass with a BB gun when I was 12 because he was about to kill a bird. Remember, one politician said, well, proof of Watson's insanity is that he shot a boy who was about to shoot a bird. And I said, well, in my town, every kid shot every other kid with a BB gun. I just happen to have a practical reason to shoot the kid I did.
Excellent. And you got the traps banned, I believe, on that occasion.
What's that? Sorry?
And I believe, like, even with that early work, you got the traps banned.
No, I didn't get them banned, but I certainly, shut down a lot of them. I was a member of a group called the Kindness Club at the time. Albert Schweitzer was actually the president of it, and the founder of the Kindness Club. She later described me as a hitman for the Kindness Club.
Excellent. It's funny how they kind of like use these terms of like hitman and stuff for like a kindness club protecting animals.
Well, yeah, what I developed over the years is a thing which I call aggressive nonviolence. And in the last 42 years since I set up Sea Shepherd, we've never caused a single injury to a single person, and we haven't sustained any injuries either. So, but we shut down literally hundreds of illegal activities. So I believe that you can be aggressive and at the same time be respectful of life.
Yeah, and you describe yourself so at 11 as an activist. So is that something which was kind of consuming at that age, or is it something kind of developed over the years?
Well, I didn't really give it a lot of thought at the time. I was just doing what I felt impassioned to be doing. But in 1969, I attended a demonstration on the U.S.-Canadian border. It was organized by the Sierra Club and the Quakers, and it was opposed to nuclear testing in Amchick Island and the Aleutians in Alaska. Now, these two groups came together for different reasons. The Quakers were for peace, and the Sierra Club was for the environment. But I was actually different. My concern was that Amchick was a wildlife preserve, and you couldn't go on the island with a gun, but here they are blowing a 5-megaton bomb under it, and it killed like thousands of seals and sea otters. And so that's why I got involved initially. So we came up with this idea to go up and protest the bomb And the Quakers had taken a boat down to Bikini Atoll in 1956 to protest there. And there was an earthquake in '64 in Alaska, which had caused a tidal wave to hit Vancouver Island and Hawaii. So that's why we called the group the Don't Make a Wave Committee, because we wanted to put that image of the tidal wave in people's minds when they were talking about the bomb. And so at one of the early meetings, somebody left the meeting and flashed a peace sign. And Bill Darnell, well, they said peace, and he said, "Well, make it a Greenpeace." And Bob Hunter said, "Hey, that's a great name for the boat, so we'll call it the boat, the Greenpeace." And then in '72, we changed the name of the Don't Make a Wave Committee to the Greenpeace Foundation.
Yeah, and that first mission with Greenpeace 1, I believe, was the first ship. And while you were sailing out in the cause of protection, they delayed the test to try and kind of foil you stopping it and try to reschedule it.
First, they sent the Phyllis Cormac as a Greenpeace boat. I wasn't on that crew. There was only 13 of them, and I was actually the youngest member of Greenpeace, so I got sidelined for that first trip. But they delayed the tests while the Greenpeace was up there, and so the Greenpeace boat returned. But in the meantime, we had organized to get in a better boat, a former Canadian minesweeper, and we took a crew of 30. And I was an officer on that boat because I previously had experience with the Norwegian, Swedish Merchant Marine, and the Canadian Coast Guard. And so we sailed up there, and then instead of delaying it this time, they blew it up 2 days ahead of time. So before we got there. So, but the end result is the incredible publicity that was generated from both of those voyages led to the cancellation of further tests. So that was the end of testing in the Aleutian Islands.
Is it sometimes difficult where you are literally traveling the world to protect places, and they'll step up or they'll delay things just to try and stop you from stopping them? How difficult is it to coordinate that?
Well, in that case, that's not usually the case, so they don't really delay or whatever. One interesting thing is 2011 that we went up to with Animal Planet to cover the killing of the pilot whales in the Faroe Islands. And the Faroese had this brilliant idea that they were going to jeopardize us or sabotage our campaign by not killing any whales that summer, because they thought that would deny Animal Planet the program, because they thought that we wanted the whales to get killed on camera. So at the end of the season, which was great because it was the only year that whales were not killed in the Faroe Islands. And so their ploy backfired, because I said at the end, I said, well, we achieved what we wanted to achieve. We don't care if it was on film. We've got plenty of archival footage or whatever. So we're not here to watch you butcher whales. We're here to stop you from butchering whales.
It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you ever saw the documentary Super Size Me, and McDonald's very proudly said, it's like, well, just to show you, we've changed our menu, so we aren't kind of like loading all these calories in. And Morgan Spurlock, who done the documentary, said, it's like, well, that's what I wanted. That's, they were saying it like a thumb in their nose. It seems to me crazy that they don't understand that's what you want.
Yeah, it's that strategy works in many occasions. For instance, in 2008, we wanted to bring the issue of the Canadian seal hunt to the forefront to the public in Europe, because they were talking about a bill to ban Canadian seal products in Europe. So how do we publicize this? So I sent our vessel, the Farley Mowat, which, by the way, we were getting ready to retire. So I sent the Farley Mowat into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, but I didn't take it in that. I managed it from shore, but I had an all-European crew on board, Dutch captain, Swedish first officer. And I dared the Canadian fisheries minister. I said, you don't dare seize my boat. You don't dare attack my boat. And of course he did. Got enormous publicity and helped to pass that bill. I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear and everything, but the Tar Baby. But I called it the Tar Baby Farley, the Farley Mowat, because we sent something in there and we said we don't want this to happen, but in fact we did want that to happen, and the government played right into our hands on that.
Excellent. So just to get back to kind of like those earlier days, so it sounds like from quite early on you're working with ships and with sailors from all around the world. So you mentioned I believe Sweden and Norwegian, but also the Canadian and British merchant navies. Like, what was it like as a young man to go out into the seas and to be kind of mixing with all these kind of international people and get involved?
Well, I left home at 15, so at 17 I joined the Norwegian Merchant Marine, and then I was also with the Canadian Coast Guard. So when we put Greenpeace together, I think I was probably one of the only ones that actually had any sea time experience, and so that made it easier for me to to join that crew.
And it feels like you take all this in your stride at 15. That's like not what most people do at 15, join the Navy and meet up with all these people from around the world. It's incredible.
Well, it wasn't the Navy; it was a merchant marine, really.
Sorry, pardon my.
Yeah, my first voyage was on the Norwegian bulk carrier Briss. So we crossed the Pacific and the Indian Ocean and brought cargo to Mozambique and South Africa. So, in fact, I was exposed to apartheid and saw what was going on there when I was 17. Also, the situation in Mozambique and in Zimbabwe. But it certainly instilled in me a sense of adventure, and also, a feeling that if you want to get involved, you can get things done. You just have to be passionate about it, and don't be immune to criticism, and just do where your heart guides you to go.
Yeah, it feels like definitely as you're going through all these experiences, I don't know if you take it in your stride or if you just take it in quickly, but it seems like you go on quite quick learning curves anyway.
That I what? Sorry.
That you go through quite quick learning curves with all this. So, you're traveling the world, you're seeing all these different things happening, and it seems like you build on those experiences kind of in quite a kinetic way, but just judging by your history of the things that you've achieved.
I guess so. I never really thought about it that way. I learned a lot. Back in 1973, I was a medic for the American Indian Movement during the occupation of Wounded Knee in South Dakota. And that's where I learned a very valuable lesson, because we were surrounded by about 3,000 U.S. Federal agencies who were shooting about 20,000 rounds a night into the village where we were. They wounded 46 people, killed 2 people. And I went to Russell Means, who was the head of the American Indian Movement, the leader of the American Indian Movement there. And I said, Russell, we can't win this. There's only 300 something of us and 3,000 of them, and they got all the weapons and armored personnel carriers and everything else. So why are we here? And he told me something that stayed with me all my life. He said, well, we're not concerned about the odds against us, and we're not concerned about winning or losing. We're here because it's the right place to be, the right thing to do, and the right time to do it. And he said, don't worry about the future. What you do in the present will define what the future will be. So that's what I've done all along, is I don't really give much thought as to where we're going. I deal with the situations in the present, and the future sort of evolves the way it should. I never thought in 1977, when I set up Sea Shepherd, that it would evolve into a global movement, but that's the way it went. And which is great, because a movement's better than an organization. You can stop an individual and you can shut down an organization, but you can't stop a movement. And we're now in 42 different countries, and there's really no leadership. I mean, I'm involved, but I don't call the shots, and no single person does. But we have so many campaigns now as a result of that.
Yeah. So something I wanted to get back to, some of the individual campaigns and some of the things which you've done, which so you said there about kind of having, just concentrating what the right thing is to do more than the danger in that moment, if that's a kind of okay way to encapsulate it. But like, you've stood on an iceberg standing down a ship. Like, can you just talk us through a moment of doing something like that?
Well, I don't really think about it too much in a confrontation situation. You're pretty much in the moment. In fact, I find it a very when you're in that kind of situation, it's you're very much aware of what needs to be done, and so almost all the decisions you make are intuitively the right decisions. So you're not crippled by being afraid or doubting what you're doing. And I found that works really quite well. So the decisions just come automatic,
really. Do you get surprised by other people not feeling like that, or is that just it's your way and that's okay?
Well, that's my way. I mean, everybody has different ways, but I think our most successful captains and officers and directors are the people who approach it that way, who go in there fearlessly and are motivated by passion. See, I always say that there's 3 virtues that can enable somebody change the world, and that is, 1 is passion, and 2 is courage, and 3 is imagination. If you have all those 3 virtues, and also if you're immune to criticism, then you can pretty much do whatever you want or achieve whatever you want. And I always also say that, when people say to me, well, it's pretty difficult, it's pretty impossible, this whole situation is pretty impossible to solve. Well, then that's when you look for the impossible solution to the impossible problem. And impossible solutions can come. I mean, I always cite 1972, the very idea that Nelson Mandela would be president of South Africa was unthinkable and impossible, and yet it became possible. And there's just so many examples like that.
Yeah, and it feels like, I mean, how do you treat when you're facing down someone who doesn't seem to understand why it's important? Someone who's like just determined to destroy the animal in front of them, and do you deal with them with compassion, or just kind of like your only mission there is to stop them?
Yeah, I'm very detached on that. Well, you just you don't get angry, and you control your emotions and do what you can to block, to harass, to intervene.
Have you ever had kind of dialogues where you've kind of in the moment even broke through to someone as a kind of human in that moment, even though you're on the two different sides of it?
I don't try to communicate with the people who are doing these things. For the most part, the people we deal with are criminals. We're not really, I don't hold out much hope of trying to convince them of anything. When people are making a lot of money off of something, you're not going to rationally talk them into changing their behavior. So we don't deal with that, and we oppose the operation, not the individuals.
Okay. And there was another such incident where you were kind of like hoisted up while you were trying to protect some seals and dragged through the blood and gore left.
Well, back in 1977, the problem was that happened that year. Up until 1977, I was with Greenpeace, and Greenpeace's approach is bearing witness and protesting. And I always felt protesting was somewhat submissive, but I was sort of had to do what they did because that was the approach. And how do I stop a sealing vessel? So I handcuffed myself to the winch line that was pulling the pelts in. And I thought that I was safe because the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were there. And but no, they just pulled me across the ice into the water up the side and dropped me into the water. And the Mounties just watched. And then I was taken up, suffering from hypothermia. I was taken up onto the deck and dragged through across the blood and the gore on the deck, and kicked and spit on and everything like that. Again, the Mounties did nothing about it. The problem with protesting is it's sort of like it's very submissive. It's like, please, please, please don't do this. And they do it anyway because they really don't care. So I felt that's why I felt there was a need for us to create something that would intervene, not protest, but to intervene, to shut down, to harass, to stop, and to block. And that's, in fact, what we've been doing. It's been very, very successful. Greenpeace is very critical of us for this because they say that, you got to bear witness and everything. But to me, that's just another way of saying you're a coward. I mean, you don't go down the street and watch a woman being raped and take her picture, and you don't watch a dog being kicked to death and hold up a protest sign, and you don't watch whales die and just hold banners and take pictures. No, you've got to stop it. You got to intervene. And so I think that's a big difference between our approach and the Greenpeace approach.
Certainly, but like, I mean, how do you just hold it together in just that moment? Like, what goes through your mind at the moment where you're getting literally winched up and dragged across the ground?
Well, nothing really. I mean, you deal with the situation in the present, and you try to find, you think of ways to deal with the situation that you're in, but you do it without any fear or apprehension, and that.
Yeah,
and I've always felt that whatever happens, you use it to your advantage. It's sort of like I used to study Aikido, a martial art where you basically take the forces that are coming against you and make them work in your favor. And that's what we try to do with Sea Shepherd, is we try to use our opposition against themselves.
Yeah, and that definitely strikes a chord with something you were saying before. You said that it's about being kind of more active than passive, yet it's so important to you, obviously, to keep within, make sure you're not harming other people, making sure you're trying to work within the law. How do you ride all those like different things?
You have to work, for your own survival, self-preservation as a movement. You have to operate within the boundaries of the law and also the boundaries of practicality. About 10 years ago, I was invited to give a lecture to the FBI in Quantico, and don't know why they invited me, but they paid me to do it. And at the lecture, one of the FBI agents said, "Well, Sea Shepherd's walking a pretty fine line when it comes to the law." And I said, "Well, yeah, but does it really matter how fine the line is as long as you don't cross the line?" Couldn't really argue with that. And then he said, "Well, some of your people become eco-terrorists." I said, "I don't mean, what are you talking about?" They said, "Well, Rod Coronado, I said, "He breeds some mink from a mink farm. Is that your idea of eco-terrorism?" And I said, "Besides, he did that after he left Sea Shepherd. He wasn't with Sea Shepherd." And they said, "Well, you trained him. You're responsible." I said, "Well, I hate to say this, but I got 4 names for you: Timothy McVeigh, Lee Harvey Oswald, Muammar Gaddafi, and Osama bin Laden. You trained them. Don't give me this line."
And what was his response to that?
It was actually quite funny. The guy said, "Well, they were in the Marines or something like that. Something stupid." He was just trying to save face, I guess. But the thing is that we have not been convicted of a felony anywhere. We've been to court many times, been arrested many times, but it doesn't matter as long as you win the cases and come out on top. You just have to be persistent. You have to be as persistent in the court as you are in the field. It's all part of an extension of the same battle, and you can achieve a lot that way. So you have to be careful, but most importantly, you have to stay within those boundaries. For instance, we don't carry firearms, and for a very good reason, because governments hold a monopoly on violence. Individuals, non-government organizations, they can't. We're not going to get anywhere by using firearms. But what we've done in the last 6 years is interesting, because we do have firearms on board, but they're not in our hands. We've developed partnerships with various governments in Africa and Latin America, Mexico, and we carry their enforcement people. So right now I have 2 ships off of West Africa, off Gambia and Liberia and places, and we have these partnerships where we take their enforcement people on board. What that means is that we provide the resources, we provide the volunteers, and they provide the authority to intervene. So we arrested, I think, 52 poachers in the last year. In fact, last week we arrested 2 Chinese poachers in the waters of Gabon. We're doing the same with partnerships in Mexico and Peru and Colombia. We're now in our 7th year of Operation Milagro to protect the endangered vaquita porpoise in the Sea of Cortez. We've confiscated about 1,200 illegal poaching nets, and that's a dangerous campaign because the poaching is controlled a lot by the cartels, the same ones that move the drugs. So we've had Molotov cocktails thrown at us. We've had drones shot down. I've equipped the ships with netting to protect them, and the crew all wear Kevlar vests and helmets. But we stand our ground to protect the vaquita. And I think I'm quite confident that if it wasn't for our presence there, the vaquita porpoise would now be extinct. We stopped the killing, and we're keeping them out of the vaquita refuge, and it's been working quite well. Our approach is also, we also take a legal approach. Right now we have a lawsuit against the United States and New Zealand to protect the Maui dolphin, and we're proceeding with that. And we've had quite a few successes in the courts. And just this week, for instance, with Sea Shepherd France, we were able to get the EU to put pressure on France for the killing of dolphins in the Bay of Biscay. And so France was taking a little, had ignored that issue, and we kept pushing it, and they ignored it, but now they can't ignore it because the EU has now taken it up as an issue.
And, you mentioned the US there, and it's something I kind of fear about with my own country at the moment, with kind of a lot of changes happening with Brexit and everything. When someone like President Trump gets in office and rolls back so many protections for so many animals and the environment, how do you combat that? Like, does it feel disheartening to see so much progress for so many years just being rolled back in a 4-term presidency?
Well, I'm hoping it's temporary, but really, here's the problem, is that things don't really change no matter what political party is in the United States. The rate of forest deforestation under Clinton Gore was greater than it was under Reagan Bush. They're just 2 sides of the same coin. The one advantage of Trump is that he makes it so blatant about what he's doing, where the Democrats just sort of sneak it in under the carpet. So, it's, in a way, I think it's been very enlightening having him as president to show everybody just how bad the situation is. I don't think he'll win again. I mean, it's always possible, but I don't think he will. But the fact that the progressives within the Democratic Party have been sidelined again. I don't think that. I mean, Joe Biden is for fracking. He's for Wall Street. He's for all the same things, pro-war and everything else. So, are things really going to change that much? I don't know. When Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, I couldn't come back to the States because she was going to extradite me to Japan at their request. I had to wait till John Kerry was Secretary of the State before I was allowed to return to the U.S. So politically, I don't think you get really accomplish anything politically. Governments cause problems. They don't solve problems. Every single major social issue in history has been solved by the passion, the imagination, and the courage of individuals. It wasn't Abraham Lincoln that ended slavery. It was people like Douglas and Wilberforce. It wasn't Woodrow Wilson that gave women the vote in the United States. It was the suffragettes who suffered for it, were imprisoned and were beaten for it. The government takes credit for it. Wilson gets credit for giving women the vote, but he was their main opposition for 10 years. So I don't really think you can really expect governments to solve any of these issues. It has to be individuals. I mean, look, I think Greta Thunberg has accomplished more on climate change than any of the world leaders have.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you saying that, because it seems like, even though I do completely take your point, it is individuals who make those differences and force governments sometimes to make the differences. But certainly from what's reported in the news, or maybe that's kind of a bias in there, but it feels like Trump has rolled back kind of protections which have been in place for a long time, which took years to put in place. He's rolled back quicker than previous governments. And I don't mean this is a Democrat or a Republican issue. Is that not as it seems, do you think?
Well, they rolled them back, but I mean, if there's a new administration, they can unroll them, or they may choose to keep it going. It's hard to really predict what governments are going to do. But here's the difference between, say, for instance, Justin Trudeau in Canada and Donald Trump in the United States, is that Donald Trump says that climate change is not a problem, it's not an issue. Justin Trudeau says it is, but they both do nothing. So they both accomplish the same, only Trump's a little more honest about it on that. So, in other words, Trudeau's doing a lot of posturing, but it's business as usual. He's still representing the interests of the oil companies. There's still the tar sands that are happening. The pipelines are being built. The tankers are still running. So he's done nothing to mitigate that at all. And yet he looks good because, well, you got Donald Trump there looking so bad, so it makes him look good. But, Joe Biden is all for pro-fracking, and he said it right there. He said, well, if you don't like it, you don't have to vote for me. Because, see, the Democrats had this attitude, well, you have to vote for us. It doesn't matter what we do. You have to vote for us because Trump is so bad. And that I don't vote for him. I vote green.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you might be opening my eyes to something here. It just feels like a lot of the moves that Trump, again, certainly what's on the surface seems like it's like he doesn't care kind of what voters he upsets, because he's kind of got a greater idea in his own head of what's happening. At least other politicians are restrained by some sort of like toadiness to get votes, which he isn't.
Well, Trump is predicted long ago by Marshall McLuhan, who was a media philosopher. When the news becomes entertainment becomes the news, and then, of course, you're going to have actors and entertainers are going to become the politicians. It's like Idiocracy, the film, Yeah. So I'm not surprised at all of this. But I mean, when Trump goes on about fake news, he's right in one sense. It's not fake news. It's no news. You don't get any coverage on real environmental issues. 1,200 people have been murdered. 1,200 environmentalists have been murdered over the last 10 years. You don't see it in the newspaper. You don't get anything covered like the pipeline protests or anything like this until it really, it becomes violent, and then they cover it. And then they usually cover it negatively. The mainstream media is a problem, and he's right in that respect. He's definitely right. Not for the right reasons, but it is a problem. I find the mainstream media to, they have a whole glossary of terms they use for environmentalists. Militants, extremists, eco-terrorists. I mean, they just throw these things in out all the time. They don't really like to, try to actually delve into why people are concerned, why people are upset, because the same people who own the mainstream media own the corporations that are part of the problem. I always look at the province of British Columbia in Canada as a really good example of this. They had a PR firm called Burston and Marsteller. That PR firm represented the government of British Columbia. It represented the television stations and Pacific Press, the newspapers, and it represented the forest and mining industry. The same PR firm representing corporation, government, and media. So you can see how it's all tied in, and they get what they want. So the forest industry does whatever they want, and they're above criticism because the media will not criticize. And the only way that you can get around that is to be flamboyant. That is to do things which are outrageous to get their attention. Then they can't do it because there's three elements of media. There's only three things that any news story is concerned with: sex, scandal, violence, and celebrity. Every story has to have one of those elements. If it doesn't, then it's not really a story. If you have all four elements, you got yourself a super story. A good example is I led a campaign to stop wolf hunting in British Columbia years ago. And they were shooting wolves from the helicopters, which is violent. They were threatening to shoot us, again, violent. We've got an environment minister that we exposed for taking a bribe from big game hunters, so we had the scandal. So I recruited Bo Derek as our spokesperson, and at the press conference, a reporter for the Vancouver Sun, he said, "Come on, what's Bo Derek know about wolves? This is ridiculous." I said, "Well, that's not the point, is it? You make the rules. We play the game." And the fact is that if I had Dr. David Meck or Dr. Gordon Haber here, the two foremost wolf biologists in the world, it'd be an empty room. But this place is packed. The cameras are here. It's going to be the front page of your newspaper tomorrow. You're going to write the story. Your editor is going to give a headline. And you know what? There's not a damn thing you can do about it, is there? You can control your story if you can control those four elements.
So there's something about using their own tools against them.
Yeah, because they can't resist those things. They can't resist, if it bleeds, it leads, that kind of thing. They just simply can't resist it. That's the kind of, the games that the media play. They're not interested in information. We don't have Walter Cronkite anymore. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was the kind of guy that we had in the 60s and 70s who read the news. There was no opinion about it. He just read the news. This way and everybody was left to make their own decisions about what they heard. But now, it's all biased. Yeah. Here, if you're a right winger, you listen to Fox News. If you're a left winger, you listen to MSNBC. They say the same things, and they're just drilling the same message into people who already have that message. And so there's no real. There's even the BBC. The BBC used to be, I thought, impartial and independent. There's no inflections in the voices. That's all changed now. It's all become a world media, and they're all very partisan or oriented. You're either Labor or conservative, you're Republican or Democrat, and everything. I don't really think we have any real media or big media that is truly independent. That is neutral. Information across.
But even then, like with the way they do things, I completely understand what you're saying about like a subversive way of kind of like using certain terms to paint people in certain lights. But it seems to have gone from subversive to avertive. They seem to be kind of like not even trying to hide what they're doing anymore. Do you think that's more dangerous, or is it just, again, more of the same?
Well, I think people are confused, and people don't really get the messages. They don't understand the world that they live in. They either believe that climate change is real or they don't, and you can't really convince them to look at it any other way. Oops. Oh, we still there?
Yep, still got you.
I somehow lost you here. I don't know why. 1 second.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you. I just sort of went away for some reason. I don't know why. Sorry, here we go.
No problem.
It has me re-entering your studio for some reason. I don't know why. Oh, here we are.
Still hearing you, seeing you okay?
Okay. Can't see you, but I can talk.
Okay. And it's like, just to take you back to kind of like the moment when you decided to leave Greenpeace, when its ideals stopped meeting your own. Was that a difficult decision after putting all those years in it? Was it something you considered changing from within, or was it just felt too far gone for you?
Well, it wasn't a difficult decision because there were other elements in play, not just that. The fact is it was becoming increasingly bureaucratic. And I just, suddenly there was some board of directors with lawyers and accountants that were calling the shots. And that was pretty much it in it for me and for a lot of other people. Not many people realize that when I left Greenpeace, that a lot of the Greenpeacers came over the next few years and became crew members on Sea Shepherd vessels. And that including Bob Hunter, who was president of Greenpeace, who was a lifelong friend of mine before he died in 2005. But so we in a way, Sea Shepherd is the original Greenpeacers. There isn't a single Greenpeace co-founder who is with Greenpeace today. They've long since been forced out, or they quit, or whatever. But I find it amusing today because Greenpeace tries to change their history. They changed it on their website saying, well, Paul Watson's not a co-founder of Greenpeace. He was simply an early member, although it used to be that I was a co-founder. So it's almost like the Bolsheviks are going to take me out of photographs or something. I don't know. But then the movie How to Change the World came out, which was about the early days of Greenpeace, which certainly demonstrated that I was a co-founder. And so they've been pretty quiet ever since then. But I find it hilarious that people who weren't even born at the time are trying to dictate what the history of Greenpeace was.
Yeah, and it seems very interesting that you're trying to still be very pragmatic about it and still trying to work with them, but you've been blocked from that. They printed letters kind of denouncing your work, whereas you've said, look, we can save more animals if we work together.
Well, one of the funniest things, back in 1986, when we sank half of the Icelandic whaling fleet and shut them down for 17 years, and I had a Greenpeace former Greenpeace colleague approach me and said, "I just want to let you know what you did in Iceland was reprehensible and unforgivable, and you're an embarrassment to the movement." I said, "Well, look, John, I didn't sink those whaling ships for you or Greenpeace. We sank them for the whales. You find me one whale anywhere in the world that disagreed with what we did, and I promise you we won't do it again." But in 1986, I was doing a talk show in Vancouver, in Canada, when somebody called in a bomb threat to protest my violence, which I thought was somewhat ironic. And so we had to, leave the building, and there's journalists down there, and somebody put a microphone in my face and said, "Well, Greenpeace has just called you an eco-terrorist. What's your response?" I said, I just wanted to laugh it off, really. I just said, well, what do you expect from the Avon ladies of the environmental movement anyway? Because they're knocking on doors asking for money. They've never forgiven me for that, but yet they call me an eco-terrorist.
It's just, again, it seems to tie into the kind of theme of like everyone choosing their own news, everyone choosing their own such small subsets. Does that kind of thing make it more difficult to get the cause across, get kind of as many animals as possible saved? That's what you're there for,
Well, I'm not really interested in the cause in that respect. I'm interested in doing the work I'm doing and the campaigns that are successful. We shut down this illegal operation. We saved this many whales. We saved this many sharks. This is the kind of thing that we're interested in, and how people perceive that is not really much of a concern. I did the Bill Maher show, and he said, "Well, people call you an eco-terrorist." I said, "I don't know why. I've never worked for Monsanto." So you just get used to these kind of things. Back in the 90s, when they called us pirates, I said, "Okay, well, if you want us to be pirates, we'll be pirates." And we designed our own pirate flag and everything. And because, again, it's a keto. You make those things work for you. And, pirates get things done. They cut through the bureaucracy and the red tape. And they get things done. But again, you have to be pragmatic. You have to stay within the boundaries of the law, the boundaries of practicality, and do what you need to do.
And plus, let's face it, that's quite a bitching logo you've got. I know it's about the work, but come on, it doesn't hurt that you've got a very awesome kind of logo to get behind.
Yeah, well, what we have is a skull, which represents humanity's destruction of the ocean, and the yin and yang of the dolphin and the whale in the forehead, which represents that harmony is to be found in the sea within ecology. And the black represents the extinction that we're responsible for, and then the shepherd staff is protection, and the trident is aggression. So aggressive protection or aggressive nonviolence is what the logo stands for.
I mean, I joke, but it is a powerful symbol. It is something which I first heard about your work when I was at a vegan fair a few years ago in Southampton here in the UK, and just to see that symbol, it is something which catches the eye very quickly.
Well, young people like it, so that's good.
As I say, it doesn't hurt that it looks good on a keyring.
Well, pirates have always been somewhat romantic, whether people agree with them or not. They've always been somewhat romantic, and also been very much understood. If you go back to the 17th century and look at pirates, they had democratic ships. They had gender and race equality. We don't think about those things. People say, "Yeah, well, they're a bunch of thieves." Yes, they stole gold from the Spaniards, who, by the way, stole it from the Indians. So, real big deal. But they also, if you were, Blackbeard used to waylay slaving vessels and free the slaves and give them a choice: go ashore or join my crew. And if they joined his crew, they could rise to the highest level in the crew. I mean, that was unheard of in the 17th century. And yet, so we forget about those things, those aspects of piracy. We also forget that some of the most illustrious seagoing adventurers were pirates. Sir Walter Raleigh, Sir Francis Drake, John Paul Jones, Roger Surcouf, Jean Lafitte, all of them. So they have a very romantic legacy in that respect.
The sending feeling I get where everything that you do, every part of Sea Shepherd is deeply thought out, but it also has to, to a degree, have a kind of single-mindedness of mission about it. How do you balance those two things without one treading on the other?
Well, our mission is very simple. That is to shut down illegal activities. We're an anti-poaching organization, and to save as many lives as we possibly can. That is our mission. And at the same time, there's guidelines, and those guidelines are we do it without hurting anybody, and we don't compromise, and we don't sell out. For instance, we're an international movement, but we don't invest money in fundraising. You don't see our people out on the streets asking for money. We're not sending out direct mail. Our attitude is that if people want to support us, they come to us. We're not going to spend people's money going after more money. And that's kept us small, relative. I mean, Greenpeace's budget is 360 million euros a year. Ours is 12 million after all of these years. But, we have something that they don't, and that is the passion of our volunteers. It's the volunteers that's what makes Sea Shepherd what it is. Right now, there's 100 or so men and women on 9 different ships on these campaigns currently. And if not, that's what makes us what we are the passion of these volunteers. The people on the decks, the people in the engine room, the people on the bridge, the people on the beaches who are cleaning up trash or protecting turtles. That's what makes us what we are.
Okay, to take it back to where you began with Sea Shepherd, how kind of difficult or how much goes into creating a new organization and setting a set of principles for it? How laborious is that getting that going?
I don't really know, because Sea Shepherd evolved. I mean, we didn't really give a lot of thought to it growing. In 2005, I had a crew member. She is from France, and then she said, "Well, I'd like to organize Sea Shepherd in France," and she went back and she did, and now she's the president of Sea Shepherd France, and they're accomplishing a lot of things. So we try to encourage people to take the initiative in that respect, and that's worked out quite well. But to give an idea, how do people get involved? 1981, I get a call from a guy in Glasgow, and he said, "They're killing gray seals here in the Orkney Islands. What are you going to do about it?" I said, "I don't know. I'm on the other side of the world. What are you going to do about it?" He said, "Well, what can I do?" I said, "Well, just use your imagination." So what he did was we helped him set up Greenpeace. I mean, not Greenpeace. We helped him set up Sea Shepherd, and he went up to the Orkney Islands, very enthusiastic. He and his volunteers just literally pulled the rifles out of the hands of the sealers, created such a stink. All got arrested. All won the cases, but so much publicity that we raised the money to buy the island they were killing the seals on, which is today a seal sanctuary. And that was all because of one guy saying, "Well, what can I do?" And so we try to encourage that all the time. In 1979, I had an 18-year-old guy who said, they're torturing chimpanzees and monkeys in laboratories, and what are we going to do about it? I said, "Well, we're not going to do anything about it because we're a Sea Shepherd society, but if you're so passionate about it, why don't you do something about it?" And he said, "Well, what can I do?" I said, "Well, use your imagination." So anyway, he went back to Maryland. Got a job in one of the law labs, and for a year he documented and exposed everything, got it into the Washington Post, shut the thing down, and then founded the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And we've had so many other organizations that have begun because of the volunteers who came on board our ships and understood that they can make a difference, that they didn't have to, that they had the power to act, and that they didn't have to wait for the right conditions or the permission to do what they needed to do.
Do you have a kind of where it sounds like it grows so organically but so quickly? Is there a difficulty in making sure everyone kind of shares the same vision as you and kind of goes in the same direction with Sea Shepherd?
Well, we have had attempts to take it over, and we've been on top of that. But we keep our message consistent, and if there's any move to change that message, then we try to nip that in the bud. And we control that basically through the one thing that we do control, which is the copyright on the name and the logo. So we control that. But it doesn't mean people don't try to change the agenda, but we just have to be on top of that all the time. But what I find very incredible about Sea Shepherd now is that, for instance, I'm not the leader of Sea Shepherd now. Alex Cornelissen is the global CEO of Sea Shepherd. He's based in Amsterdam, and there's dozens of captains and dozens of directors, and they operate autonomously, and my position really is just as an advisor in a way, I guess. I do a lot of writing and talking these days, but it's a movement, and that's, to me, the most powerful thing you can build is a movement. It's better than an organization.
And is the side of it, the writing and the talking side of it, something that came naturally to you? Is it just kind of just a progression of the same kind of mission, or is that something else?
Well, I've always been a writer. I mean, during the 70s, I was a journalist with the Georgia Strait in Vancouver. In fact, funny part about it, I was the environmental reporter on the Georgia Strait. Bob Geldof was the music reporter on that back then. So I've been, writing all my life. So okay, it's something I do.
Okay, and how about the presenting? Is it kind of something that is that the best way of kind of like just getting the message out, just to go out there and speak to the people?
Well, when we were setting up, when Sea Shepherd was growing, I didn't get paid, so therefore I had to find a way of making a living. So I began doing lectures at universities, and I taught at UCLA. I taught at Art Center in Pasadena. So I sort of evolved that separately then from Sea Shepherd's work.
And there's so many different kind of campaigns always happening around the world, so many different kind of things to go to. How do you pick what the next mission is, what the next kind of important thing to go towards is?
Well, I don't. That's picked by people in the different countries, about 42 different countries. So, for instance, stopping turtle poachers on the island of Mayotte, that was a decision by Lamia Samlami of Sea Shepherd France. Going to the Faroe Islands this summer, that was a decision by Rob Reed in Glasgow. Going to our African campaigns, those are overseen by Peter Hammarstedt from Sweden. So these campaigns are initiated by the various directors and captains, and so I also have initiated, like for instance, the Milagro campaign. I did initiate it. I don't lead it. So that's how it works, really, and that's why we can have so many campaigns at the same time. It's not coming under the authority of any one person.
Was that was that something which was very conscious, that like the more people you kind of put in positions and the more people, the wider the net goes, to use a fishing metaphor, the more it kind of outlives you, basically. It's kind of like, it's not just reliant on what you're doing. Loads of people can be doing something around the world.
Well, yeah, that's it. Again, that's the nature of a movement. And it also guarantees that Sea Shepherd will become stronger into the future. Again, it's not dependent upon myself.
And what do you do to try and kind of like keep yourself challenged within it, or is it just so busy that that's not an issue?
Well, I'm busy all the time, right?
Yeah.
Whether I'm writing books or talking or doing interviews or whatever. So there's certainly a lot to do, and also I have a 3-year-old son, so that's a new adventure on its own. So.
I mean, it does seem amazing that you spend in the midst of all this, you find the time for a child as well. It must be, how do you achieve the balancing act of all the different kind of projects and raising a child that you're doing?
Well, I don't look at it as a balancing act. You just do what you do, and it just comes naturally, I guess.
Okay, and like, can you tell us about the current fleet that Sea Shepherd has, and the levels it's got to?
Well, our 2 largest ships are the Bob Barker and Sam Simon. They're currently on patrol in the waters of West Africa. We have 3 former U.S. Coast Guard patrol boats: the Sharpie, the Farley Mowat, and the Jean Paul de Joria. So the Sharpie and the Farley Mowat are doing poaching campaigns in the Sea of Cortez to protect the vaquita. Our vessel, the White Holly, is getting prepared to go to Peru and Colombia to go against overfishing there. Our vessel, the Bridge of Bardo, returned from documenting the Chinese fishing fleet in the waters between Peru and Galapagos, and is presently in Mexico and is actually undergoing maintenance right now. The Martin Sheen, our only sailing boat, is just leaving now for a campaign, a research campaign with Mexican scientists off of Guadalupe Island in Mexico. The John Paul de Joria is being prepared for anti-poaching patrols in the Caribbean. The Emmanuel Bronner is working in the Baltic. The Jairo Mora Sandoval is working in Cabo Verde Islands. Steve Irwin, we've just retired, but we're also looking at securing 2 more vessels. So we're actually now we're the largest non-governmental navy in the world right now, and I think it'll probably grow. I never really gave it any thought to its growing before, but it just seems to be doing that. It's evolving to becoming a stronger and more pervasive, movement.
Do you ever take any time and kind of look at what you created, or is it just always about the next thing?
No, mainly we're, there's always the next campaign. You don't really dwell too much on the past. They just did a documentary on me called Watson, which did an overview of a lot of the campaigns, not all of them. But I'm hoping that film, which was made by Leslie Chilcott, who did Inconvenient Truth with Al Gore, I'm hoping that it'll inspire a lot of young people, especially to understand that they don't have to be concerned about criticism. They just have to go with their passion and just do it. And so I'm hoping that'll be the impact of it.
And when's the film out? Where can we see it?
Well, the film's available now. It's been out for the last year. We've done a number of films. We did Sea of Shadows, protecting the Vaquita in the Sea of Cortez, Chasing the Thunder, about our pursuit. It's the longest pursuit of a poacher in maritime history, 110-day pursuit from Antarctica to Equatorial West Africa. That was made into that movie. There's a Defend, Protect, and Preserve. We're having a movie coming out soon called Seaspiracy, which is a follow-up to the film Cowspiracy, showing the destruction of the world's fishing industry. So again, it's important to utilize media like film, to reach as many people as possible.
And what would you say to someone like if there was kind of one bit of advice you could say to people who are interested in getting more involved and doing, if there's one thing that we can all do to try and protect sea life, what would you say?
Well, it's not just sea life, but the strength of an ecosystem is in diversity. The strength of any movement has to be in diversity. So people just need to find out what they're passionate about and then use their skills and their abilities to make a difference. So whether it be litigation, education, or legislation, or direct action, or filming, or being a lawyer or a teacher, it doesn't really matter, as long as they can utilize those skills to make this a better world. And I think that's what people should focus on, what they do best.
And from where we are at the moment and everything that's happening in the world, again, do you keep positive?
Well, I always keep positive. I've never been one to be pessimistic about it, because things will be what they will be. The one thing I sort of jokingly refer to is that, we either win or we lose. If we lose, we go extinct. And also if we lose, well, one thing I've learned from mass extinction events over the last, since the beginning of time on this planet, is that they all have one thing in common. When the Permian extinction wiped out 97% of everything, the Jurassic extinction wiped out the dinosaurs. Well, what did they all have in common? Well, after a period of 18 to 20 million years, it all recovered. So if the Anthropocene, that is the 6th major extinction event, which would be caused by ourselves, if that happens, then 18 to 20 million years ago, it'll be a really nice planet again. We just won't be here. But the planet is going to survive. It's never been about saving the planet. This whole movement is about saving ourselves from ourselves, really.
And it seems like something which gets back to the kind of kindness of, like, it doesn't matter. It's not about kind of the future. It's about just this moment, about this animal which is suffering, and doing the right thing.
Well, it's about doing what you can in the present, and that will define the future.
And it seems like another wonderful way in which you're just so grounded in the moment. Like, is there anything, like, I try to be as grounded and as present as possible. Have you got any advice to someone like me who tries to be more like that?
Well, yeah, and I think, I wrote a book earlier this year called How to Deal with Stress and Climate Change. And really what you have to do is just accept that you can only do what you can do. And you can't be stressing out about it and everything. What will be, will be. When people say, well, that's a problem, I said, well, it's always something, isn't it? It's always going to be something. No matter what happens, it's always going to be something new. Just deal with it. Just accept it and go with it. Life is a wonderful, wonderful gift, and we're so fortunate to have it, and therefore, why squander it? You do with it what you can. When people say, "Aren't you afraid of dying?" I said, "Nah, nobody who's not afraid of living is afraid of. Nobody who's not afraid of dying is afraid of living. It's how you live is what's important, because one thing that we can be absolutely certain about is we're going to die. So does the timing really make any difference? So try to make the most of it."
Well, thank you for spending an hour with us. Thank you for spending an hour of your time with me. Just before we go, I'm just putting the website up for seashepherd.org.uk. Is there anywhere else people can go to read up more?
Well, yeah, we have Sea Shepherd sites all over Facebook and the social media. But where you are is probably Sea Shepherd UK is the best place to check in.
And of course, because we did get viewers from around the world, please do check out Sea Shepherd for your individual country. Again, thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've been Dr. Squee, and that was my show. Good night, everyone.